Thanks everybody for joining us. This is tips and best practices for hosting the Intro to OER Adoption workshop. And okay, I have a few housekeeping things to address. So we kicked off the week with the OEN land acknowledgement and the community norms. If you'd like to review them, you can find them at the links that I'll post in the chat in just a second. We welcome you to share your local land acknowledgement in the chat if you wish to do so, or you can visit the Native Land digital site to learn more about the lands that all of our members inhabit and dig deeper into our relationships with our heritage and how we can actively be a part of a better future moving forward. Just so you know, the session is being recorded to benefit those in our community who are unable to attend, and the links will be shared out after the event, the links to both the slide decks and the recording. If you have comments or questions during the session, please submit them via the chat, and we will do our very best to address them. So today's agenda, we will hear from some wonderful guest contributors from Christina Norton, at Bradley University, Timothy Sandusky from Bowling Green State University, Lindsay Gavush from Community College of Rhode Island, and Zara Wilkinson, our reference librarian from Rutgers University. So we're going to go ahead and start with Christina, and thanks again to our presenters today for sharing their wisdom and tips with us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina. I'm the online learning librarian at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. It's a private university. And I was previously a member of the Consortium of Academic and Research Libraries of Illinois, which we call CARLI, OER committee. And I would still be on that committee if there wasn't a cutoff for how many years in a row you can be on that committee. When I was on that committee, we had 3 regular sort of workshop offerings that we would offer multiple times throughout the year, one of which was Understanding and Promoting OER, which was geared towards librarians, Faculty OER Workshop, which was for classroom faculty, and Open Pedagogy Workshop, which was librarians or faculty. Those are the general audiences. On my own campus, I also have an OER mini grant program for instructors who want to swap a commercial textbook for an existing OER or a slight modification of existing OER. And for that, I use content adapted from the same faculty OER workshop that we offered through CARLI. And I facilitated all 3 of those workshops at least once. So my first tip is to flip the classroom, like treat it like a classroom. Instead of maybe like a presentation. So the Understanding and Promoting OER was a 3-part workshop. And initially, when we did it with CARLI, we presented a lot of information during the 3 synchronous sessions. We would kind of like lecture, and that started to really drag. Because this was something people had to register for, it wasn't just drop in. We knew who was theoretically going to be there, so we started providing the more informational content before sessions, like via email, sending links to be like, read this and watch this video, please. And then we focused more session time on interaction and discussion, though we still included some quiz questions for review and recall, like, do you remember what percentage of these grants used to cover tuition and how much the cost of tuition is go up? Do you remember what the gap is now between, like, that kind of stuff for recall, but also some informational content to break it up, because nobody wants to just be in like discussion groups for an hour. So yeah, and you might think, Christina, this is just like good pedagogical practice and an established best thing to do, but we just didn't think about it the first time or 2 we did it. I don't know. And then we got our heads right. So that's my first tip. And then my second one, when I made this slide, I thought it had all the information it needed, but now I'm like, I need to provide more context. So this tip is more in the context of the workshops I offer for my faculty on campus who are going through our little mini grant program. And I think what I mean more is meaningful homework. And I offered 2 workshops for these faculty. In the first one, we talk about finding OER and what they are. like looking at repositories and things like that. And then in the second workshop, which is usually a couple of weeks later, we talk about Creative Commons licensing and assessing OER, both for things like accessibility and DEI and fitness for like the course as a replacement for whatever they were using before. When we did the workshops with Carly in the Creative Commons session, we would give them like case studies, like Jimmy Carter has Peanuts 101 as one OER and another one about being a good president. Can he combine them together for his class if it has this kind of Creative Commons license, you know? And if it was no derivations, then no, we couldn't. Those kinds of exercises. For the workshops I offer on campus, I asked them to identify at least a vaguely interesting OER. It doesn't have to be one that they're super in love with, just one that looks somewhat relevant. And then during the second workshop, instead of doing those case studies, I asked them questions about how they want to use it. And then we look at the license and see if that license supports what they want to do. So it was sort of the same content about how Creative Commons licensing works, but I make them do a little homework to like identify something good and think about their own needs and then see how those things overlap. And those are my 2 tips. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, so much. I met Christina through the Colleague Connector program, and no matter where you are in your open ed journey, I urge you to consider that program. It was really fun getting to know someone from the community in a different way. So anyways, thank you for sharing with us today. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Timothy Sandusky.
Hello, everyone. I will second the colleague connector. I met with 2 wonderful colleagues, one from nearby and one from the East Coast, and we plan on staying in touch afterward and still having meetings together just to hear each other and support each other. So if you have not done that, I 100% second what was said. But I'll just introduce myself. My name is Tim Sandusky, and I am the Open Educational Resources Strategist here at Bowling Green State University. We're a medium-sized university in Northwest Ohio, and OER works well here because we have a motto, a public university for the public good. And so pushing open educational resources to administration using our motto has actually gotten us some good traction with the Vice President for Student Success and also the Provost's office. So we have a team of 3 folks, myself, my supervisor, who is the Associate Dean of University Libraries, and then my colleague, who's a Scholarly Communication Strategist. And we work together on many projects, but my 2 colleagues are very helpful in our grant program that we have. The first we just created, and we're going to start running in a couple of months here for the fall semester. It's an ancillary grant. So instead of offering money for adoption, we're actually going to offer people money for their ancillary packages that they're using for their OER textbook that we can then submit to the different OER clearinghouses, so that other people can build off of what other people have already done instead of having to start from scratch. And then we have our annual OER creation grant. We do this every fall. We try to do at least 3, but last year we were fortunate enough to be able to do 6. So there are 9 textbooks coming down the pipeline, and we just published our 2nd with the grant, and there's a 3rd textbook that was published outside of the grant process. So my tip is when you're doing these sessions, personalize your session. So faculty tend to respond better when they have something that directly impacts them and their work. So this kind of leads off what Christina was saying about sending folks things beforehand. I liked to reach out ahead of time when we had people sign up and ask them to provide their syllabus so that I could scour those for keywords, because I always let them know you are the subject expert. I am the search expert when it comes to OER. So your syllabus is not being used for any other method but to help me find keywords. Um, this way I can try to have a resource or two ready for them during the session for them to review, and it makes them have something tangible to walk away from the session with. So they have a textbook to look at or a couple to review, and it starts that conversation between me and them, and seeing if that doesn't work, could I find something better, and at least gives them something to walk away with. And I think that is it.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you so much for sharing. And Timothy, did I come across you? Were you in one of our certificate programs or my
Yes, I got the OER certificate and OER librarianship in the
librarian?
fall.
Got it. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Thanks for being
thank
here.
you.
Our next presenter is Lindsay Gavush, my friend and colleague, with whom I co-created, along with many, many other people, Heather Maselli and Will Cross as well, and many others, the Certificate in Open Pedagogy. So I'm very happy that she's with us today. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks, Tanya. It's been really great to be back here with the OEN. And honestly, I've picked up some great tips already so far, thanks to my colleagues. So my name is Lindsay Gavush. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Assistant Dean of Libraries at the Community College of Rhode Island. Been in that position a little over a year. So just full disclosure, I am not running these workshops anymore, but I did at my past institution, and I am supporting one of our librarians now who is running them. So just a really quick snapshot of the Community College of Rhode Island. As you probably know, Rhode Island is very small, so this is the only community college in our state. We have 4 campuses, and last fall, our total enrollment capped off a little over 12,000. That's including both full and part-time students. Our OER efforts, like many others, live within the library. We're working really hard to kind of get it out of the library silo with some other partners across campus, but digital equity is certainly one of our largest initiatives as a community college. So that includes our tech lending program, which is really popular with our students, making sure students can take out laptops and hotspots for the entirety of a semester. But our OER strategy also falls under our digital equity strategy. Okay, Tanya, so you can move forward to the next slide. So some of my tips are, first, I want to really emphasize the tips that Christina and Timothy just talked about are certainly in my repertoire as well, but I tried to think of some different ones. And one of the biggest ones that helped me through these workshops were to focus on being completely transparent with everyone in the room. So when I'm talking about being transparent, I try to put it in a few different buckets. And so like one of the biggest ones is really getting a grasp and understanding your own capacity. And that includes, both the limitations and opportunities that come along with that. But in the background, you should be having conversations, with your supervisor and your peers and colleagues. Like, is OER your only job title? Odds are not. I'm very jealous of people that have that luxury, but oftentimes it's just part of your job responsibilities. So really understanding how much you can commit to supporting faculty. So bringing it back to this workshop, when you're in the workshop, understanding what exactly are you offering these faculty? Is it just the adoption? Is it support with adaptation? Is it support with creation? All of those come with varying levels of capacity. So it's just really important to assess, what do you have to give to these folks? And if someone expresses interest in, hey, I found this really great OER, but it's, I want to change it a little bit. Can you help me? Just being really honest, and hopefully the answer is yes, but the answer might have to be no, and that's okay. I think as long as you're transparent from the beginning. A piece of this also comes with developing and maintaining relationships with folks in other departments where you might see OER kind of blending over. So I'm thinking about maybe Maybe that's your online learning division, maybe it's IT, maybe it's instructional designers. So if in these workshops you are showing faculty, hey, you can link this OER into your Blackboard shell. You want to make sure that if you are offering that as a capability, because that might be really enticing to faculty, you want to be sure that you have had a conversation with folks who that responsibility might be under them. So if it's an instructional designer, they're not caught off guard. Hey, Lindsay's sending all of these people to me and I don't really know how to support these people, or I don't have the capacity to support them. So making sure that you just upkeep relationships with um, any department that you might be hoping that would support your faculty in these workshops as well. And that kind of technology segue brings me to just being familiar with and knowing what's available on your campus and or with your system or organization. Um, is it the LMS where folks might be, putting OER and linking chapters out? Does your LMS actually have like an LTI integration with OpenStax? Do you have a Pressbooks instance? Being very familiar with everything that is available to folks and anything you're offering, just feeling comfortable like you could support them through that. Okay, Tanya, next slide, please. Okay, thanks. So I think laying the foundation is really important during these workshops. And if this is, a one-off 45-minute or 1 hour workshop, it's extra important to just understand what the goals are in the room during that hour and what you can accomplish outside of the classroom. So Christina talked a lot about kind of scaffolding that pre-homework, making sure folks show up with certain knowledge. I think that's a really great idea. Or maybe it's following up with them, saying, if you really are interested, if this sounds like something that you have the time and interest in pursuing, let's set up an appointment, come back and see me. So it's really tempting sometimes for us to get into the weeds when we're talking about OER with someone brand new, helping them understand, like, yes, it's a free resource, but there's also these copyright permissions that allow us to do these exciting things. And if you're someone like me who is like a copyright nerd and just thinks it's the coolest thing to talk about, sometimes you do like get in the weeds and then you just see like their eyes glaze over and you're like, oh, they're not as interested in me as me. But it's important, like, just give them what they need during that session. Don't get in the weeds. You can always follow up and give them more information when they express the need. And that kind of goes along with like identifying and communicating relevant data and talking points for like the audience that's in your room. So maybe that's maybe you do some kind of intake form at the beginning, survey, or an email ahead of time to just kind of see like, why are they attending your session? Are they there because they want to help their students break down information barriers, access and cost barriers? Are they there because they are interested in leveraging the permissions of OER? Maybe they want to adapt something to better customize it to their learning outcomes. Having a sense of why they're there helps you share those relevant data points with them. You can share statistics. Maybe you have some local stats. Maybe a new research article has come out where you can share with folks. So just really knowing like what you want to share with them ahead of time so you can help lay that foundation in that session. And then I think it's really important to make sure you leave plenty of time for dialogue and questions. Again, this session is your opportunity to kind of hook them in, get them interested, lay the foundation, but you don't have to, focus on building the whole house during this session. Okay. And then my last one, I kind of just touched on this, but this slide is actually adapted from my colleague at the Community College of Rhode Island, Jim Salisbury, who is actually our OER librarian. I'm very fortunate to have Jim. And I love how Jim uses these 3 buckets in his session, and I wanted to share them with you. So in the room, like he's done this session for many years, probably like, let's see, 2016, probably close to 10 years at this point, like these kinds of sessions with faculty. And over the years, he's identified these like 3 buckets that usually show up in the room. One are the believers, like the folks who they're there, they know why they're there. Maybe they've used an OER in the past and they want to do more, or they just want to be there because they're excited and they want to share with their colleagues. It's really important to regularly acknowledge these folks, to extend your gratitude, and definitely to engage them with you in this work. It's excellent to, have those faculty champions and someone who can be an advocate within your faculty. Those are the believers. And then we have the curious. So folks who show up because, hey, this session sounded really interesting. And yes, I'm interested in saving students money and I want to see what you have for me. I want to hear more and maybe I want to connect with someone who's like a believer. So it's important to, acknowledge and thank them for also showing up, for showing interest, and make sure to follow up with them. Hey, did you find what you need? Like, how can I help you? Are you interested in setting up a one-on-one appointment to find an OER that might be appropriate for you? Make sure you keep that relationship. And then you'll always have the skeptics. They're always going to be there. They might not be in the room, but they'll be somewhere. Maybe in faculty senate, you'll see them or whatever. They don't have time, and that could be for various reasons. Priorities are, people are being pulled in so many different directions with higher ed these days. Um, it's okay that not everyone is going to be interested or have the time. Or maybe they have committed the time and they just can't find what they're looking for. It's not comparable to the commercial product they're using right now. It takes more time and effort, whereas a commercial product maybe is just everything set up for them. They don't have to think about it. That's okay. We still want to thank these folks and we still want to keep them engaged because maybe in a year or two, you'll find something, hey, remember that skeptic? Like this would be perfect for them. And you still have that good relationship and you can bring them back into the conversation. So these are the three buckets and it's okay to have all three. I'd be curious if folks have identified another bucket. But that is all I have for you today. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Lindsay, and please thank Jim for us because I love this. Not only does it kind of categorize people, but it's, here's how you might approach them. Here's what you actually might say. It's super helpful. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send him your regards.
absolutely. Thank you. Our last speaker who's graciously said yes, she'd be here is Zara Wilkinson from Rutgers University. Thank you, Zara.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Zara. I'm a reference librarian. So I wanted to start with some background about Rutgers really quickly. Rutgers is a really large public university in New Jersey. Across the entire university, we have almost 70,000 students and almost 10,000 full and part-time faculty. So when I talk about Rutgers, I'm talking about something just really huge. But Rutgers is broken into 4 of what we call divisions or chancellor-led units or campuses, which are Camden, Rutgers, Newark, Rutgers, Camden, Rutgers, Newark, Rutgers, New Brunswick, and Rutgers Health. I'm based at Rutgers Camden, which is our smallest campus, which is in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. All of those pieces of Rutgers have a shared university infrastructure, which does include the library system. So as a librarian at Rutgers, I'm actually affiliated with Rutgers University Library, which has outposts and librarians on each campus, and we all kind of balance our local constituents with our system-wide programs and needs. And so one of my responsibilities that spans the local and the system is membership on our open and affordable textbooks program team. And we call this OAT, Open and Affordable Textbooks. Our OAT program started in 2016 and has been going strong since. We offer 2 awards. The OAT Course Redesign Award, which is $2,500 for faculty to redesign their courses. And we do include anything that makes this course save money for students. So that's OER, library resources, other free materials, self-authored materials, etc. We've estimated we save students kind of a lot of money since 2016. In 2021, we added an authoring award for the explicit creation of a brand new open textbook. We've given about 17 of these since 2021, including the largest amount in 2025. So we've seen a growing interest in this. We do have press books to support the authoring award. So just kind of to contextualize some of my tips, and I'm coming at this, most of my sessions are around in getting faculty interested in our OET program, which does include OER and other resources. We can go to the next slide. Yep. So I grouped my tips here into 2 separate categories. I was a little ambitious with my tips. I have that problem. But my first one is really just meet faculty where they are. I think this is probably the most important one. As you already heard from Lindsay's great slide from Jim, you're gonna get just the gamut of faculty members. You're gonna get the die-hard believers, you're gonna get the skeptics, and whatever comes in between, you're gonna talk to them as well. And that's okay, you know, that's great. One of the things I try to foreground for myself is that some of those skeptics have really good, many of them, most of them probably have really good, very valid reasons for being cautious. I've talked to a lot of faculty members, particularly adjuncts, non-tenure track faculty, pre-tenure faculty, who maybe don't feel like they have the standing, the autonomy, or the protection to fully embrace OER, to go against the grain of their department. Maybe they're feeling some reluctance on the behalf of their department chair. And so it can be really helpful to just contextualize and remember the individual barriers that some of these skeptics are facing. And sometimes if you talk about those head on, there are ways forward. And so that's really useful to remember. So moving past that, some of my other tips, I always encourage faculty to really consider what they like and what they don't like about the current textbooks that they're assigning in their course. And I find this really helps them to evaluate alternatives. What they don't like can become an opportunity of something to look for in an OER. And what they do like essentially is going to be their yardstick of what they're measuring OER against. And so helping them and me have an understanding of what those two things look like can really ease the process of beginning to find some potential OER. Similarly, I encourage faculty to think about mixing and matching OER. I think there's a tendency when you're picking a textbook to assign for your students to buy, you want to satisfy. You want to find the best available option that's out there, and you tend to just choose one because most faculty don't want to ask their students to buy multiple textbooks because they're going to assign half of one and half of the other. But with OER, if they're free to students, this opens up a realm of opportunities. Faculty members can assign half of one OER about one topic, half of another OER about a different topic, and depending on the licensing, they can even potentially merge those two chunks together. And so just being really explicit about this possibility with faculty can be really helpful because the textbook market kind of has you primed to not think about materials like that. Similarly, and I hope this isn't controversial here, but I also encourage faculty to not forget about library resources and course reserves. Sometimes I talk to faculty members and it's clear that what they like about the commercial textbook that they've been using is one fairly small piece. They like an introduction that gives a really useful framing for their course content. They like the final chapter that engages with the topic in a really new and novel way that no other book does. And so reminding them about something like course reserves, where depending on the amount of the book that they use, we might be able to scan that chapter and make it available to their students for free. It actually removes one of those potential barriers to using OER because they know that they can reserve just that one chunk. That's really the reason that they've been tied to that book. And it helps ease the way or serves as a stepping stone to experimenting with OER and kind of moving away from being tied to that book. The corollary with that is to not assume that our faculty attendees at these sessions necessarily know the difference between OER, library resources, and other types of free resources. Many do, many don't. So it's worth being really explicit. You know, you don't have to harp on it, but being really explicit about what some of that terminology means so that faculty know what their whole range of options are. Go to the next slide. And then my second tip is something we've already heard a little bit about, but it's just personalized follow-up. We've heard of this before, but if you can include time for questions and discussions at the end of the session, really, really useful. If you're doing an in-person session and can kind of make a point of trying to chat with all or most of the attendees, that's great. I'm often doing these sessions on Zoom, which don't really allow for that. So I tend to reserve some time at the end of the session, or even block off time in my schedule after the session for faculty who want to hang back, so that there is that opportunity for that personalized follow-up. Similarly, if you have the bandwidth and the capacity to offer opportunities for one-on-one follow-up meetings, I found this to be really useful to discuss those specific course and faculty members' needs. You've already heard this before, but when possible, make targeted recommendations based on the content of the course. I know I used to be reluctant to do this because I'm not the subject matter expert, but I find that even if my recommendations aren't perfect, they show what the possibilities are. And it's also, I know myself, I don't like looking at a blank document. It's always better to start with something than with nothing. And then lastly, I just can't really stress email check-ins enough. Faculty are really busy. We often hold these sessions at times when they're not actively planning their course for the next semester or the next year. And so it can be really useful to reach out gently at different points in time, particularly if you have an award or a grant program. Send those personal reminders to faculty who've come to your sessions, who've emailed you with questions, who you've chatted with in the line at the coffee shop about OER, anyone who's expressed interest. When our award applications are open, I am a proverbial thorn in our faculty members' sides. Always a nice thorn, always a helpful thorn, but I really want them to remember that adopting OER and pursuing course affordability is something that they can do, and it's something that I and my other librarian colleagues would be happy to help them with. So personal follow-up is probably the biggest one here. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Love those great tips. Thank you so much, Zara, and thank you to all of our presenters for their wisdom and tips and best practices. And we're at that point where we can open it up for questions. So if you want to ask any of the presenters a question, would you please place a question in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that. The first one has already come in. Zara, how is your award program funded?
That is a great question. So our award program is actually funded straight from the library's administration. So we are very, very fortunate that our university librarian sees our open and affordable textbook program as the crown jewel of the library. And so we are very, very fortunate to have that as a permanent, or currently permanent, part of the library budget.
If you prefer to unmute to ask your question, feel free to do that. You can unmute or put it in the chat as you prefer. How has anyone had luck with asynchronous courses, in quotes, versus synchronous sessions? Anybody want to tackle that one? Has anyone tried asynchronous?
I can chime in a bit. I did try asynchronous years ago, probably like 2019 when I was at Roger Williams. I used, not sure if anyone's familiar with Rise 360. It's an articulate program, and it's like modules, assessments, really user friendly. So I did create like a intro to OER kind of module, and I'm sorry, I'm like stuttering because I'm trying to remember like what I did with it. I think I had it just on the library's, it was in a LibGuide. I had it like embedded in a LibGuide. And I did kind of like market it a bit to faculty. Hey, if you don't have time to come to one of these sessions, like just know this is always here. And then when people did show up, I did point it out and say, you know, if you want more information or want some reinforcement of topics we talked about today, want to learn more about Creative Commons, I would point them to that. So I didn't do it in a meaningful, like I wasn't assessing or communicating with folks. It was just kind of a standalone module that was there.
And I can also say, I now get to do something I forgot to do in my slide, which is promote Ohio Link, which is our statewide consortia, and they are the reason I got to do the OER librarianship course this past year. But they do a course redesign grant for statewide that anyone at any Ohio college or university can apply for. And the asynchronous sessions work really well for longer form courses like that, where they're doing multiple weeks or multiple steps in a project. So for theirs, it's not just finding an OER, which we usually do for them and provide them some OER to look at, but they learn about Creative Commons licensing in depth. They learn about OERs and the other resources that might be available. So asynchronous works really well for that. But for these smaller sessions that are like one-offs, I find that synchronous really does work a lot better for me.
Thanks, Tim. And Amy popped in the chat that Texas has created a peer-reviewed online training system that could be used asynchronously. So that's in the chat if you want to take a look. Stephen is asking if Christina would talk in more depth about your answer to Amy's question or in the chat earlier about whether people actually do the homework for your trainings.
Yeah, so I gave a brief answer to the initial question that showed up earlier in the chat, was that in the grant related workshops on campus, people pretty consistently did the homework, and in the workshops we did with the Carly committee, it was a little more hit or miss. And I think there's maybe 3 points to address. One is that the ones I do on campus are, like I just said, grant related, so they're getting money, so they might be a little more motivated. And they have to apply for the grant, identify a class that they want to find an OER or a combination of OER and library resources for, so they already are kind of like at the point where they're ready to do this, where the faculty OER workshop, they might be, or they might be in some of those other categories that Lindsay outlined. Like they might just be curious, they might not have something specific in mind, so they may not be, and they're not getting money. It's free, but they're not getting money. So in those workshops, they might be a little less motivated. The homework is different. My workshops are only 2. And in the other one, there were 3. So there was a little more homework in the other one. That may be part of it. And my workshop groups are smaller. I think the most I've ever had is like 4. So it's easier for me to like pressure them to do their homework because they know me and I'm like, did you do it? Whereas with the workshops, there are people from lots of different institutions, and it's the relationships aren't there to facilitate like do your homework. So I think that would explain the difference. And it's not, I think most people were interested enough to do stuff. I just can't say that it was 100%. So
In the chat, someone asked what months are professors typically planning for their courses actively, feels a little hesitant to contact them when they're taking a break during the summer. I think I second that hesitation because you might just get crickets because they're off. They are, taking a needed break. Lindsay supports that, saying that she found out that reaching out around April to offer summer support has been good. That way they can assess whether or not they'll have the time to do it. Tim agrees, usually reaches out toward the 4th or 5th week in a semester, and then at the end of spring before they take off for the summer. Good, thank you for these great questions and answers. Are there any other questions? You can unmute or put it in the chat as you prefer. Presenters, it's a long one to read, but can you take a look at Christine's? It's a really great question, what she's asking. Any insights about how to handle those situations?
let's see where you,
Christina,
but okay.
I'm just laughing because, like, yeah, I mean, we run into this all the time, and I think the only thing I can say is when I am presenting like an ebook to faculty as an option to adopt for their course, I let them know of the restrictions that are typically in place. So the things you mentioned, Christine, in your chat question, like typically like the access code, there is no access code for that kind of purchase. Oftentimes it's restricted to 1 or 2 users for things like that. So, and oftentimes if you're purchasing it as part of a package, like individual titles disappear all the time from packages without notice, so that can happen. So I don't really have any good advice. The only thing I do is just I'm transparent about like what could happen. Christina, what do you think about that?
I was going to reference the transparency thing you talked about earlier to be like, because sometimes they get frustrated. They're like,
Yeah.
Can't you buy the ebook version of this? And I'm like, sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. And I'll like give them a peek behind the curtain and give them like a screenshot of like Gobi or something where it says not available. Like I tried.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
just transparency and managing
never thought to
expectations.
take the screenshot. That's really good. I'm not lying to you.
Yeah, I think I always, when I talk to people about library ebooks, I do typically send them over to their liaison librarian so that they can work with someone they may have worked in the past who has a little bit more background in that subject, especially when you're digging through all the ebook packages and the different publishers. Everyone's ebook works a little bit differently. We are lucky to have Ohio Link in Ohio, so we have some great packages. But I do talk to faculty about if you're insisting on looking on your own, to look for those packages where the book says unlimited users or unlimited access or unlimited users at one time, whatever the language the different platforms use, because that'll keep there from being a traffic jam for that textbook. And some of them allow you to download pages, but only up to 100. So if you're going to use a chapter from that's great, but the whole book may not be the best option. So with ebooks, library ebooks being so finicky versus like non-academic titles for Amazon Kindle, it really is best to make sure they're looking at all the fine details.
And Cheryl also, suggested reaching out, looking at the textbook adoption deadlines, reaching out to faculty several weeks before for help with some of these issues. We had a situation on my former campus where an entire library or an entire platform just disappeared. It crashed and they didn't have enough technological support. And that was enough to convince the faculty member that she shouldn't be using that platform and instead she should be creating her own ancillaries. So that was enough to like catapult her because she was so scared of that happening again. So sometimes a bad situation can be, you can make lemons out of lemonade. I guess that's what I'm saying. Also, Amy says you could also focus on courses where academic monographs are used. Those are most likely to work out for library access as opposed to textbooks with access codes. Upper division courses and grad courses sometimes assign these. Kelly reiterates, when we offer purchasing an ebook, we always reiterate that the ebook has to be 1, available for purchase, 2, full campus access, and 3, reasonably priced. We can be flexible on number 2, depending on how they intend to use the book. That's helpful, Kelly. Thank you. Any other questions? Check our time. We have about 10 minutes left. So any other questions or comments before we wrap up? Okay, if not, then thank you so much, Christina, Timothy, Lindsay, and Zara. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us today. If today's session sparked ideas, questions, or thoughts, we encourage you to continue the conversation in the Google group or reach out to our team. But we also have a space for continued discussion on this topic of OER adoption and OER involvement at 2 p.m. Central right after this, regarding engaging faculty in this work when financial incentives aren't possible. We hear that all the time, so we have some people willing to share what they've done on their campuses. And then we have a debrief that's a casual, informal gathering to just discuss what we thought, to talk about questions, concerns, and that's at 3:15 Central. So please join us if you'd like to continue the conversation. Finally, we want to remind you that this session has been recorded and will be shared with you via email and posted to the Community Hub in the coming weeks. Slides and transcripts will also be linked. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we hope that you have a great rest of the afternoon.